when one of the most famous actors in the world walked into a luxury car dealership on a regular Tuesday morning, nobody recognized him. And why would they? He wasn't wearing a designer suit. He wasn't stepping out of a blacked-out SUV with bodyguards clearing the way. He wasn't announcing himself or asking anyone to pay attention. He was wearing a dirty gray hoodie with a motor oil stain near the pocket, jeans that had seen better years, and sneakers that had basically given up on being white a long time ago. His hair needed a trim. He hadn't shaved in days. He looked like a guy who had been working in his garage all morning and remembered he had somewhere to be. That guy was Keanu Reeves, and he had just walked into one of the most expensive car showrooms in Beverly Hills, California. You know, where a single vehicle costs more than most people make in 5 years. The floor manager took one look at him and made a decision in about 4 seconds flat. He saw the hoodie. He saw the stained pocket. He saw the worn-out shoes. And he decided, right then and there, before Keanu had said a single word, that this man did not belong here. That he couldn't possibly afford anything in this room. That he was, at best, someone who had wandered in off the street to look at things he could never buy. So the manager walked over and said something that he could never take back no matter how hard he tried. 5 words, said quietly, said with the smooth confidence of a man who believed he already knew exactly how this story was going to end. He said, "You can't afford this, sir." The showroom went quiet. Like a young saleswoman looked at the floor. A senior salesman suddenly found somewhere else to be. Everyone in that room felt those 5 words land, and nobody moved. And Keanu Reeves said nothing. He just reached into the pocket of that dirty gray hoodie, the one with the motor oil stain, and pulled out a card. A matte black credit card. The kind that doesn't have a spending limit. The kind they only give to a very small number of people in the entire world. He placed it gently on the glass counter, and then he said 4 words of his own. He said, "Then let's find out." But here's the part that nobody talks about. Here's the part that changes this story from a simple moment of a rich man proving a point into something that will genuinely make you rethink the way you see people. Those 3 cars Keanu was about to buy, well, not one of them was for himself. And the address he wrote down on a small piece of paper, the second one, the one going to a little house on a cracked sidewalk in Van Nuys, was connected to someone in that very showroom in a way that nobody in that building could have predicted. A connection so unexpected, so quietly devastating, that when the truth finally came out, one person in that story sat down on the floor of their apartment and didn't get up for a very long time. Stay with us for the whole video, because the part that will actually stay with you forever hasn't even started yet. The hoodie was gray, not stylish gray, not the kind of gray that costs $180 at a boutique on Melrose Avenue and comes pre-wrinkled to look like you don't care. And this was the kind of gray that happens when black gets washed too many times and simply gives up. Somewhere between too many spin cycles and too many years, it had surrendered its color and become something in between, the shade of a sky that can't decide whether to rain or not. There was a stain near the left pocket. Motor oil, dark and stubborn, the kind that doesn't wash out no matter what you try. The drawstrings had been pulled unevenly so many times that the left one hung 2 inches shorter than the right. The hem was frayed. The cuffs were worn thin at the edges from 1,000 mornings of being pushed up over wrists while someone bent over an engine or workbench or something that mattered more than appearances. The man wearing it had dark hair that needed a trim. He hadn't shaved in 3 days, maybe 4. His jeans were clean, but old. His sneakers had once been white and were now the color of a story that had been through a lot. He walked through the glass door of Blackwood Motor House on Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Hills, California, on a Tuesday morning in September 2022, at approximately 10:45 in the morning, and he did not look like he belonged there. The showroom was the kind of place that made you feel the money before you saw it. The air conditioning was set to the exact temperature of quiet wealth, cool enough to remind you that someone was paying a large bill to keep it that way. The carpet was thick and the color of charcoal, so clean and so deep that each step felt slightly muffled, like the room was asking you to lower your voice. Spotlights hung from the ceiling at careful angles. You'd trained on the cars the way museum lights are trained on paintings. Because that was what these were, really. Not just machines. Pieces of art that also happened to go very fast. A Lamborghini Huracan Evo sat nearest the door, matte black, and crouched low to the ground like an animal deciding whether to move. Beside it, a Rolls-Royce Ghost in pearl white caught the light and gave it back slowly, the way expensive things do. Deeper in the showroom, almost glowing on its own, a Ferrari 296 GTB sat in a red, so deep and pure it looked like it had been painted by someone who had strong feelings about the color. The man in the dirty hoodie didn't gasp. He didn't reach out to touch anything. He didn't take out his phone to take pictures. And he walked in with his hands in his pockets and looked at the Lamborghini the way a person looks at something they have already spent time thinking about. Quietly, without performance. From across the showroom, behind a wide glass desk near the back wall, Brandon Voss looked up from his paperwork. He was 43. He had been the floor manager at Blackwood Motor House for 6 years. His white shirt was pressed sharp enough to draw a line. His tie was the color of a storm cloud and knotted perfectly. His shoes were Italian leather, and his hair was the kind of neat that takes real effort to achieve and more effort to maintain. He had an eye, or believed he had an eye, for people. For what they were worth. For what they were going to do. He had spent 20 years in luxury car sales building this instinct, and he trusted it the way other people trust weather apps or doctors. He looked at the man in the dirty hoodie. He stood up, straightened his tie, took 3 steps toward his right where a young saleswoman named Maya Tran was already moving toward the visitor with a professional smile warming her face. He touched her arm. "Don't bother," he said quietly. His voice was low enough that only she could hear. "Barely." Maya stopped. She was 26, sharp-eyed, the daughter of 2 people who had worked with their hands every day of her life without complaint. She looked at Brandon and then back at the man near the Lamborghini. "He just walked in," she said. "Maybe he—" "Look at him," Brandon said. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it the way a person states what they believe to be an obvious fact. "He wandered in off the street. A man like that can't afford the parking here, Maya. Don't waste a full pitch." Maya looked at the man in the hoodie one more time. He had tilted his head slightly at the Lamborghini, the way a mechanic does when he is listening to something inside a machine that nobody else can hear yet. There was something completely calm about him. Something settled and unhurried, like a person who has stopped needing the world to move at his speed. "I'll still say hello," Maya said. Brandon let her go. "Suit yourself." She walked over. She smiled. She said good morning and meant it. And the man in the dirty hoodie turned and looked at her with dark, kind, tired eyes and asked her, politely, without any rush, if she could tell him about the Rolls-Royce. And then the Ferrari. And then, gesturing back at the matte black Lamborghini behind him, that one too. 45 minutes later, Keanu Reeves bought all 3. But to understand why that matters, why it is more than just a rich man spending money on a Tuesday morning, you have to go back. You have to go back further than that showroom, further than Beverly Hills, further than Hollywood, and the Matrix, and the red pill, and the black coat, and all the things the world decided he was. You have to go back to a city that most people think of only as a place where bad things happen on the news. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2nd, 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon. His father, Samuel, was Hawaiian and Chinese. His mother, Patricia, was English, a woman who worked in costume design and later became a costume designer for some of the biggest names in show business. His name, Keanu, is a Hawaiian word, and it means cool breeze over the mountains. His parents chose it carefully. He would spend the rest of his life quietly growing into it. His parents divorced when he was 3 years old. After that, childhood became a series of places: Beirut, then Sydney, then New York, then Toronto. His mother remarried, then remarried again. The ground beneath him was never quite still. He changed schools the way other children change shoes, often and not always by choice. He went to 4 different high schools in Toronto alone. Most kids in that situation learn one of 2 things: how to disappear into themselves, or how to pay very close attention to the people around them, because people are the only thing that stays constant when everything else keeps moving. Keanu learned the second one. He played hockey as a goalie with enough ability that people who watched him said he could have gone somewhere with it. He didn't. Something else was calling him. Something quieter and stranger and harder to explain. He started acting in small productions, in commercials, in television movies that aired late and were watched by almost nobody. And then, at 19 years old, with very little money and a dream too large for any reasonable person to carry, he drove to Los Angeles. The city had no idea what was coming. By the early 1990s, people knew his name. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 1989. Point Break in 1991, where he surfed with Patrick Swayze on real California waves and made it look like he'd been doing it his whole life. Speed in 1994, alongside Sandra Bullock on a bus that couldn't slow down. He was box office. He was handsome. He was, by any measure, winning. Then came March 31st, 1999. The Matrix opened in theaters across America and changed the conversation about what movies could do. Neo, The Red Pill, There Is No Spoon, Bullet Time. A story about a man who discovers that the world he thought was real is a constructed lie and chooses the harder truth anyway. The world bent itself around him. Keanu Reeves became, almost overnight, one of the most recognizable human beings on the planet. The money came. Of course it did. But here's the thing that gets lost in the lights. The same year The Matrix made him a legend, his personal world fell completely apart. His girlfriend, Jennifer Syme, gave birth to their daughter on December 24th, 1999. Christmas Eve. They had already chosen her name, Ava Archer Syme Reeves. She was stillborn. She never took a breath. She never opened her eyes. She arrived and was gone in the same moment, and she left a hole in two people that no amount of money or fame or time could fill. The way people tell you time fills things. Keanu and Jennifer separated after that. Grief can do that. It can pull two people toward each other or push them apart, and theirs pushed. The loss was too heavy to share and too heavy to carry alone. Then, on April 2nd, 2001, Jennifer Syme was killed in a car accident on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles. She was 28 years old. In the space of 2 years, Keanu Reeves lost his daughter and the woman he had loved. He did not release a carefully worded statement. He did not go on a talk show to cry in front of an audience. He did not write a book or start a wellness brand or turn his grief into content. He just kept going. Quietly. With the weight of it on his back, invisible to everyone who looked at him from the outside and only saw Neo, only saw the action star, only saw the money and the name. People who work with him, really work with him, on set at 5 in the morning, in rain, in heat, in the long, boring stretches between takes, say the same things. He learns everyone's name, the drivers, the caterers, the people who set up the lighting equipment before the sun comes up. On The Matrix Reloaded, he reportedly gave away $75 million of his earnings to the special effects and costume teams. The invisible people, the ones whose names scroll by in the credits while the audience is already putting on their coats. After the first film, he gave Harley-Davidson motorcycles to all 12 of the stuntmen who had trained him. He did none of this for cameras. He co-founded Arch Motorcycle Company with master builder Gard Hollinger in 2011 in a workshop in Los Angeles. He doesn't put his name on the bikes and walk away. He actually shows up. He works the metal. He gets his hands dirty. Which is exactly why on a Tuesday morning in September 2022, his hands were dirty when he walked into Blackwood Motor House. He had come from his garage. He had been working on a motorcycle and had remembered, mid-morning, the way you remember a dentist appointment or an errand you've been putting off, that he needed to take care of something. So he drove over, in the hoodie with the motor oil stain, in the worn jeans and the beaten sneakers, without a publicist or a bodyguard or anyone at all to smooth the way ahead of him. And because the 3 cars he was about to buy were not for himself, that was the part Brandon Voss didn't know yet. That was the part that would change everything. But not yet. First, there was Brandon Voss. And to understand what happened in that showroom, really understand it, not just the surface of it. You have to understand the man who stood behind the glass desk and made a decision about someone before that someone had said a single word. Brandon Voss had grown up wanting to be rich, not comfortable, not stable, not okay. Rich. The visible kind. The kind that announces itself when you walk into a room. He had grown up in Van Nuys, a neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley that sits just far enough from Beverly Hills to feel the distance every single day. Like his street on Kittredge Street had cracked sidewalks and small lawns and neighbors who left for work before the sun came up. His father, Gerald, spent 22 years working at an auto parts warehouse in Burbank, coming home with sore hands and a quiet that had nothing peaceful in it. His mother, Donna, cleaned hotel rooms at a Marriott on Ventura Boulevard, making beds that other people would mess up again by evening, wiping mirrors so strangers could see themselves clearly. There was food. Always barely enough food. And there was that particular kind of stress that lives in a house when money is always one emergency away from disaster. It doesn't make noise, that kind of stress. It just sits in the walls and the silences between sentences. Brandon had decided somewhere around age 14 that he would leave it behind. All of it. Not just the neighborhood, but the feeling of it. The smallness. The sense of being on the outside of something that other people moved through easily and naturally. He worked hard. He got a business degree from Cal State Northridge. He sold cars at a Chevrolet dealership in Burbank and was very good at it. He climbed. He moved to bigger dealerships and bigger commissions. He sharpened a skill that he told himself was intuition, but was really something he had built deliberately over years. The ability to read a person the moment they walked through a door. Clothes, watch, shoes, car they arrived in, the way they held their shoulders, the speed at which they moved their eyes around the room. These things, Brandon believed, told you everything. They told you whether to pour the energy, to offer the champagne, to pull out the full presentation, or to manage expectations early and move on to someone worth the time. In luxury sales, time was the only currency that couldn't be recovered. You couldn't afford to waste it on people who were only there to look. He had built a rule from this belief. The exterior always tells the truth. And on that Tuesday morning, the exterior of the man who had just walked through the door told Brandon Voss that this was a browser, not a buyer. Someone who had maybe parked nearby and wandered in out of curiosity. Maybe someone who wanted to sit in something expensive and take a picture for his phone. It happened. More often than you'd think. He had stopped Maya from going over with a full welcome because he had seen this story before. He believed he knew how it ended. And what he didn't know, what his rule had never prepared him for, was that the man near the Lamborghini had already looked up every car in that showroom before walking in. Had already decided. Had already done the kind of quiet research that serious buyers do without announcing themselves because they don't need to announce themselves. Maya reached the man and said good morning. She watched his eyes. She had learned in 2 years at Blackwood to read eyes rather than clothes, and what she saw in his was focus. Not wonder. Not tourist excitement. Focus. The specific, informed focus of someone who knows exactly what they're looking at. He asked about the Rolls-Royce engine specs. She told him. He asked whether the Ferrari's hybrid system affected the balance on tight corners. She told him everything she knew and admitted clearly what she didn't, which he seemed to appreciate. He asked about the Lamborghini's color options for the interior. Across the showroom, Brandon watched. The irritation in his chest shifted slightly, not disappearing, but changing shape. He walked toward the pair, stopping just close enough to hear. The man used words Brandon hadn't expected. Words like torque curve and weight distribution and active suspension geometry. He spoke about engines the way Brandon spoke about spreadsheets, with the ease of someone who had spent real time inside the subject. Brandon stepped forward and straightened his tie. "Excuse me," he said, in the warm, managed voice he used for uncertain situations. "I'm Brandon Voss, floor manager. Can I ask what budget range we're working with today?" He had used this line hundreds of times. It was a filter, not a greeting. Most people without real money would hesitate here. They would recalibrate. They would say something about just looking, and the conversation would wind down naturally and everyone could move on. The man in the dirty gray hoodie looked at Brandon calmly. "How much are these three?" he asked. Brandon blinked. "I'm sorry. These three." The man gestured, unhurried, easy, at the Lamborghini, the Rolls-Royce, and the Ferrari. "All three together. What's the number?" The showroom held its breath. Brandon looked at this man, the frayed cuffs, the uneven drawstrings, the motor oil stain that had survived at least a dozen washes, wore it a case, and he said it. He said the thing that, once said, could not be pulled back. Sir," he said, keeping his voice low and practiced and professionally kind. "With respect, I'm not sure you can afford this." The silence that followed was not loud. It was the quiet kind, the kind that lands in a room and stays. Maya looked at the floor. From across the showroom, Derek Solano set down the tablet he had been pretending to read. The man in the dirty hoodie said nothing for 3 full seconds. He did not look embarrassed. He did not look angry. He looked at Brandon the way a very patient person looks at something they have decided not to argue with. Then he reached into the pocket of the gray hoodie, the one with the motor oil stain near the seam, and he pulled out a card. Matte black. Heavy. The kind of card that doesn't list a credit limit because a credit limit would be beside the point. He set it gently on the glass surface of the nearest display counter. "Then let's find out," he said. What happened next was not dramatic in the way people imagine when they tell this story later. There was no slow clap, no triumphant music rising from somewhere, no moment where the man in the dirty hoodie straightened up and delivered a speech about judging books by their covers. He just stood there, patient and still, with his card on the glass counter and his hands back in his pockets, waiting the way people wait who have learned that most situations resolve themselves if you give them enough room. It was Terry Ashworth, the finance director, who moved first from the back. He had heard everything from his office. The question about the 3 cars, the silence, the words Brandon had said that were already impossible to take back. Terry was 51, careful, precise, a man who had spent 3 decades in automotive finance and had developed the particular skill of staying calm when numbers became very large very quickly. He came through the back door with the expression of someone balancing 2 completely opposite emotions at the same time, and not quite managing either. He extended his hand. "Mr." he started. "Reeves," Maya said quietly beside him. Her voice didn't shake. She said it the way you say something you have just figured out and are still catching up to. "Keanu Reeves." Terry's hand stayed extended. He shook Keanu's hand with the careful firmness of a man recalibrating everything he had planned to say in the next 30 seconds. "Mr. Reeves," Terry said, "it's a genuine pleasure. Let me get everything pulled together for you." "Take your time," Keanu said. "And is there somewhere I can get some water?" 3 people moved toward the small refrigerator near the reception desk at the same moment. Priya Mehta, a 20-year-old college student working the front desk part-time while finishing her business degree at UCLA, got there first. She brought a bottle of still water back and handed it to him. He took it with both hands and thanked her by name, because he had heard someone use it briefly when he first walked in, and he had remembered. Priya went back to her desk and quietly sat down and did not say anything to anyone for a while. The numbers came together on Terry's desk in the back office. The Lamborghini Huracan Evo was priced at $287,000. The Rolls-Royce Ghost, like in the deep midnight blue that Keanu had selected without hesitation when Maya held up the color chart, the way a person points to something they've already pictured, was $360,000. The Ferrari 296 GTB in a red that sat on the warmer side of the spectrum, a red that Maya had suggested quietly and Keanu had agreed to with a small, certain nod, was $315,000. Taxes, delivery fees, and the additional interior configurations Keanu had chosen on the Rolls-Royce brought the final number to just under $1.2 million. $1,194,000. On a Tuesday morning, by a man in a dirty gray hoodie who had come from his garage. Keanu sat in one of the low leather chairs across from Terry's desk and read every document before he signed it. He didn't skim. He didn't wave his hand and say, "Wherever you need me," the way people sometimes do when they want to perform their own wealth. As if reading the paperwork carefully is something only people who can't afford things do. He read each page. He asked one question about delivery scheduling and listened to the full answer before nodding. Maya sat nearby, ready. Derek Solano had discovered an urgent reason to be somewhere in the back of the building. He had not returned. Brandon Voss was in his glass-walled office. He was sitting at his desk. He was not doing anything at his desk. "Maya," Keanu said, still looking at a document, not looking up, his voice easy and unhurried. "You've been great today." "Thank you, Mr. Reeves." "Keanu's fine." A small pause, not the kind that happens when someone offers you something unexpectedly simple and generous, and you're not quite sure how to receive it. "Keanu," she said carefully, "it was genuinely my pleasure." He looked up then. "The commission for these 3. That goes through you?" Maya hesitated. "Technically, yes, but because Brandon is the floor manager, the standard split would—" "I want it recorded that the sale was yours," Keanu said. He wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't performing outrage on her behalf. He was simply stating a fact with the same tone of voice you'd use to confirm a lunch order. "All of it. Can you make sure of that, Terry?" Terry looked briefly toward Brandon's office, then back. "Absolutely, Mr. Reeves. Consider it done." The commission on $1.2 million in vehicles was enough to change Maya Tran's year. Why, she knew the number in her head before Terry had finished the sentence. She kept her face professional and felt something large and warm move through her chest that she would not fully process until she was sitting in her car in the parking structure an hour later, alone, with the engine off. When everything was signed, Keanu stood and stretched slightly. The natural stretch of someone who has been sitting still for a while and is ready to return to the world. He shook Terry's hand. He thanked Priya again, who smiled and looked at her desk. He shook Maya's hand last and held it for a moment longer than a handshake requires. "The Lamborghini I'll take today," he said. "The other 2, I'd like them delivered. I'm going to leave you 2 addresses." Maya offered him her pen without being asked, and he took it and wrote on a small piece of paper from Terry's desk. Not on his phone, not typed into an app, but written by hand in a clear and unhurried script. 2 addresses. He looked at what he had written for a moment, then folded the paper once and handed it to Maya. Not to Terry, not to Brandon. To Maya. "No cards with them," he said. "No notes, no names. Just the cars, okay?" "Of course," she said. He nodded once, put his hands back into the pockets of the dirty gray hoodie and walked back across the thick charcoal carpet toward the showroom floor. The keys to the Lamborghini were already waiting on the counter. He picked them up without ceremony. At the glass door, he stopped. He turned back. Brandon Voss had come out of his office. He was standing in the doorway, one hand on the frame, his perfect white shirt and his perfect slim tie and his Italian shoes all exactly as they had been an hour ago. But something in his face was different. Something had shifted behind his eyes. He looked like a man who had prepared a very good speech and then, at the last moment, understood that no speech was going to cover it. Keanu looked at him, not with anger, not with the satisfaction of a man who has just proven a point, not with any of the emotions that Brandon deserved and had fully prepared to receive. He looked at him the way you look at someone you have already decided to forgive, with a kind of patient, open recognition. The look of a person who understands something about being misread and has chosen not to carry it. He held it for 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then he turned, pushed open the glass door, walked to the Lamborghini Huracan in the loading bay where it had been pulled around, and got in. The engine turned over with a sound that was low and serious and completely alive. The sound of something built with real care for what it was meant to do. He pulled out of Blackwood Motor House and into the wide, sun-filled morning of Santa Monica Boulevard, and within seconds the matte black car was simply gone, absorbed into the flow of the city, leaving behind a showroom full of people standing very still inside their own separate silences. Maya Tran opened the folded piece of paper. 2 addresses, one in Pasadena, one in Van Nuys. She read them twice. She did not know yet what they meant. She did not know yet that the piece of paper in her hand was not the end of the story, and it was the beginning of the part that would break your heart open. Maya Tran sat at her desk after Keanu left and looked at the 2 addresses on the folded piece of paper for a long time. The showroom had returned to its usual sounds, the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant murmur of Terry on the phone in the back, the faint click of heels on the hard floor near the entrance. Everything looked the same as it had 2 hours ago. The Lamborghini's empty space on the showroom floor was the only proof that anything had happened at all. She photographed the note on her phone before doing anything else. Then she walked to the delivery coordinator's desk. Hector Ruiz had worked at Blackwood Motor House for 11 years. He was quiet and thorough and had the organizational mind of a man who found genuine satisfaction in logistics. And he could arrange the delivery of a $400,000 vehicle the way other people arrange a grocery run. Efficiently, without fuss, with every detail accounted for before anyone thought to ask. Maya gave him the 2 addresses and the delivery instructions. No cards, no notes. No names attached to either car. Just the vehicles arriving at the doors of people who were not expecting them. Hector wrote everything down. He did not ask why. In 11 years, he had learned that the stories behind the deliveries were rarely his to know. The Rolls-Royce to Pasadena, the Ferrari to Van Nuys. Both the next morning. After she left Hector's desk, Maya went back to her own chair and sat down and opened her laptop. Now, she told herself she was going to look up the Pasadena address simply because she wanted to confirm it was a real location before putting it in the system. That was true. Partly. She typed the address into her browser. Sunridge Family Services, East Colorado Boulevard, Pasadena, California. A non-profit organization. The website was simple and clean, built by people who cared more about the work than the design. There were photographs of families in waiting rooms, of volunteers in parking lots, of a small team of staff members smiling in front of what looked like a converted house with a ramp built over the front steps. The banner across the top of the homepage read, in plain letters, "Nobody should face illness alone." Maya read slowly. Sunridge Family Services had been founded in 2004 by a couple named Robert and Claire Okafor. You know whose 7-year-old son, Daniel, had been diagnosed with leukemia in 2002 and had spent 18 months in and out of Children's Hospital Los Angeles. During those 18 months, the Okafors had learned something that the medical system does not put in brochures, that getting sick is only the beginning of the crisis. After that comes the transportation, the missed work, the hotel rooms near the hospital for families who live too far to drive back and forth every day. The crushing, grinding cost of simply being present for someone you love while they fight for their life. Daniel survived. He was 29 years old now and worked as a pediatric nurse in Glendale. His parents had built Sunridge from their kitchen table in the first year, and growing it slowly and carefully into something that now helped hundreds of families across Los Angeles County every year. They provided free medical transportation, temporary housing for out-of-town relatives, emergency financial assistance for treatment-related costs that insurance wouldn't cover. The current fundraising campaign on the website was called Drive for Life. The goal was $3 million. It would fund their medical transportation program, the cars, the drivers, the fuel, the coordination, for an entire year. So far, they had raised $214,000. A long way from the goal. A very long way. Maya sat back in her chair. She thought about the Rolls-Royce Ghost in midnight blue sitting in the back lot, waiting for Hector to arrange its delivery. She thought about Keanu writing the address in careful handwriting on a small piece of paper. She thought about him saying, no cards, no notes, no names. She thought about what a $360,000 car could do for a fundraiser that needed $3 million. She stayed with that for a while. Then she looked up the second address. The Van Nuys address was residential. She could see that immediately from the satellite view. A small house on Kittredge Street, with a narrow driveway and a square of backyard where something was planted in careful rows. The kind of house that has been lived in for a long time. The kind of house where the garden gets more attention than the paint. She did not know who lived there. There was no name attached to the address. Keanu had not offered one, and she had not asked. She closed the laptop. In his glass-walled office, Brandon Voss had not moved much in the past hour. He was at his desk, technically. No, his computer screen was on. There was a spreadsheet open that he had not looked at. He had poured a cup of coffee from the machine in the back, and the cup was still full and cold. He kept turning the morning over in his mind, examining it from different angles, the way you press on a bruise to understand how large it is. He told himself the story the comfortable way first, a misread, a professional error. It happened. You could not identify every buyer correctly every time. The lesson was simple and practical. Do not filter by appearance. Update the approach, move forward. He told himself that for about 20 minutes. Then the comfortable version stopped working. What pushed through instead was not guilt about the money. Brandon Voss had been in luxury sales long enough to have seen million-dollar transactions before. But the number itself was not what was sitting on his chest like a stone. It was the piece of paper. 2 addresses. Written by hand, no names, no cards, no notes. A man who had just spent $1.2 million in a single morning and wanted no one to know about any of it. A man who had driven himself over in a dirty hoodie from his garage, alone, without an assistant to make the calls ahead of time, or a publicist to arrange the photo opportunity. Who had sat and read every page of every document before signing. Who had learned the name of the girl at the front desk from one passing mention and thanked her with it on his way out. And who had looked at Brandon, at the end, after everything, not with the satisfaction of having proven something, but with the patient openness of someone extending something that Brandon hadn't asked for and didn't deserve. Brandon knew what that look was. He had not seen it in a long time. It was the look of someone offering you a way out of yourself if you wanted to take it. He stared at his cold cup of coffee. He thought for the first time in a long time, without meaning to, without wanting to, about Kittredge Street. The cracked sidewalk, the small square of lawn, the way the light came through the kitchen window on winter mornings when he was young, falling across the linoleum in a pale yellow strip that moved across the floor as the morning moved. He pushed the thought away. He did not know, sitting in his office with his cold coffee and his open spreadsheet, that the Ferrari 296 GTB in deep red, the one being arranged for delivery by Hector Ruiz right now, 2 rooms away, was going to a house on that exact street. He did not know who lived in that house anymore, in the way that people stop knowing things they have been too busy and too careful to find out. He did not know yet that the story he thought had ended when the Lamborghini pulled out of the lot that morning had not ended at all. It had only just arrived at the part that mattered. Donna Voss was 67 years old and had lived on Kittredge Street for 31 years. She knew every crack in the sidewalk out front. She knew which neighbor's dog barked at the mail truck and which one barked at everything else. She knew that the jacaranda tree 2 houses down dropped its purple flowers in early May, and that if you weren't careful, they would stain the soles of your shoes a color that didn't wash out easily. She had painted the front door of her small stucco house herself. Twice. Once in 1998 in a green she had quickly regretted, and again in 2003 in a warm cream color that she had liked ever since. She had planted tomatoes in the backyard every spring for 20 years. She grew them in careful rows and gave most of them away to the neighbors on either side because one person can only eat so many tomatoes, and it made her happy to see them taken. Her life from the outside looked small. From the inside it was very full. She had raised Brandon here, in this house, like in the bedroom with a window that faced the backyard so he could see the tomatoes growing when he was small and find it interesting. She had worked the Marriott on Ventura Boulevard for 26 years, making beds and cleaning bathrooms and wiping mirrors with the kind of steady, uncomplaining reliability that institutions depend on and rarely acknowledge. She had retired 3 years ago when her knees made the standing unbearable. She lived now on a fixed income, carefully, the way you live when every month is a small and precise equation. 8 months ago, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Her doctor was Dr. Reena Patel, a careful and direct woman at Olive View UCLA Medical Center in Sylmar, 11 miles from the house on Kittredge Street. Doctor. Yeah, Patel had looked at the scans and said the words Donna had been afraid of, and then had immediately followed them with something important. The prognosis was good. If they treated it quickly and consistently, there was every reason for optimism. 6 sessions of chemotherapy. Then they would look again. Donna had sat in the car in the parking lot of Olive View for 30 minutes after that appointment, before she felt ready to drive home. She had not told Brandon. This requires explanation, and the explanation is not simple or comfortable. She loved her son. That was the foundation of everything, permanent and unquestioned. But Brandon had become someone, over the years, that she sometimes looked at with a kind of quiet sadness she kept entirely to herself. A man who had worked so hard to leave the feeling of Kittredge Street behind that he had accidentally left some of himself behind with it. She saw it in the way he talked about people, in the way he moved through the world like it was a transaction to be managed rather than a place to be present in. She did not say this to him because it was not the kind of thing a mother says to a son who has worked hard and meant well. She said it only to herself, in the evenings, quietly. She had not told him about the cancer because she did not want his help the way he would offer it. She could picture it exactly. The efficiency of it, the phone calls made, the bills managed, the problem solved from a distance, even the way you solve a problem you feel responsible for but not connected to. She had not wanted to be a problem he solved. She wanted to handle it the way she had handled most things in her life. Steadily, by herself, one day at a time. But she could not drive herself to chemotherapy. Olive View was 11 miles away on a good day, and Los Angeles traffic made good days rare. The bus route required 2 transfers and took an hour and 40 minutes each way, which was too long on the days when the treatment left her weak and strange feeling, hollowed out in ways she had not anticipated. Ride shares were possible but expensive in a way that added up fast across 6 sessions, and money was already the small, tight equation it always was. 4 months ago, she had written a letter. She had found a mention in the bulletin at Sant, Brendan Catholic Church in Los Angeles, where she had attended Mass for 30 years, of a nonprofit called Sunridge Family Services. The bulletin said they helped families dealing with illness. She had gone home and looked them up and read about Robert and Claire Okafor and their son Daniel and the thing they had built from their kitchen table, and she had sat for a long time before pulling out a piece of paper. She was not a person who asked for help easily. That was not how she had been raised, and not how she had raised her son, though she sometimes wondered if she had overcorrected. She wrote the letter anyway. She explained her situation in plain, straightforward sentences. The diagnosis, the treatment schedule, the distance, the money, the fact of being alone. She sealed the envelope and mailed it the same day, not before she could talk herself out of it. Sunridge had responded within a week. Volunteers came. Kind strangers in sensible, clean cars who arrived at the right time and waited in the parking lot of Olive View through sessions that ran long and drove her home without filling the silence with noise. One of them, a retired school teacher named Gloria, had taken to bringing a small thermos of tea for the drive home. Donna had come to rely on it more than she had said. 3 months ago, Sunridge had launched something called Drive for Life, a fundraising campaign. Someone had donated something remarkable to be raffled. The organization would only describe the donor as anonymous, which Donna thought was the right and dignified way to do it. The prize was a Rolls-Royce Ghost in midnight blue. Near the raffle drew 4,000 people from across Southern California and beyond. People who had never had a reason to think about owning a Rolls-Royce in their lives suddenly had one, and the idea of it was irresistible. The campaign raised $4.2 million. More than the goal, more than anyone at Sunridge had allowed themselves to expect. A woman named Patricia Delgado from Pomona won the car. She cried for a long time when they called her. The money went entirely into Sunridge's transportation fund, enough to keep the program running for 3 full years, enough to bring volunteers with clean cars and thermoses of tea to hundreds of people like Donna Voss. Donna finished her last chemotherapy session on a Thursday in December 2022. Dr. Patel looked at the new scans and said the words Donna had been hoping for. Clean. Cautiously, carefully, wonderfully clean. Donna drove home alone because by the last session she had felt well enough to drive. She sat in the driveway on Kittredge Street for a while before going inside. She looked at the cream-colored front door and the cracked sidewalk and the narrow strip of winter yard and felt something she hadn't felt in 8 months without any cloud behind it. She felt fine. The Ferrari arrived on a Wednesday morning in January 2023 at 9:17. Hector Ruiz rang the doorbell at exactly the time he had scheduled. He was precise that way. Donna answered the door in her housecoat because she was not expecting anyone. She looked at Hector, then past him, at the red Ferrari 296 GTB sitting in her narrow driveway like a sentence in a language she did not speak. "I believe you have the wrong house," she said. Hector checked his clipboard. "Ma'am, is this the residence of Donna Voss?" A pause. "It is." "Then it's the right house." She looked at the car again. It was red in a way that red usually isn't. Deep and full and completely sure of itself. The kind of red that doesn't shout but doesn't apologize either. It sat in her narrow driveway between the cracked sidewalk and the winter garden and looked like something from a different world entirely. There was supposed to be no card, no note, no name. But Maya Tron had added one thing on her own, quietly the morning of delivery, before Hector left the lot. Not a name, not an explanation. Just 3 words written on a small square of white card, placed on the driver's seat where it would be found. "You matter too." Donna stood at the door for a long time, and then she walked down the 2 front steps, slowly, the way she still moved some mornings, and took the card from Hector's hand. She read the 3 words. She read them again. She had no idea who had sent it. She would not find out for several weeks when the story traveled the way stories travel. Third hand, fourth hand, passed from someone who had been in the showroom that day to someone who knew someone who lived nearby, until it arrived at Donna through a neighbor named Cecilia, who had seen something shared online. Donna called Brandon that same evening. He answered on the second ring. His voice was the composed, efficient voice she knew, the one that asked how she was doing in the quick way of someone who expected the usual answer. "Brandon," she said, "I need to tell you something." She told him everything, from the beginning. The diagnosis last spring, the doctor, the treatment schedule, the letter to Sunridge, the volunteers, Gloria with the thermos of tea, the last clean scan in December. Her voice was steady throughout because she had already lived through the hard parts and was simply reporting them now, the way you report weather that has already passed. On the other end of the line, in his apartment in Silver Lake, Brandon Voss sat down on the floor. Not in a chair, not on the couch, on the floor. His back against the wall and his knees up and his eyes closed and the phone pressed to his ear while his mother's voice came through it, telling him the story of the 8 months she had carried entirely alone because she had not been sure he was the kind of man who could hold it with her. That was the part that landed hardest. He didn't say so, but it landed. Then, when she got to the Ferrari, the red car in her driveway, the card with 3 words, the anonymous donor, the address written in someone's careful handwriting, Brandon was quiet for so long that she asked if he was still there. "I'm here," he said. His voice had changed. "Do you know who sent it?" she asked. He closed his eyes. He saw the dirty gray hoodie, the motor oil stain, the matte black Amex card set gently on the glass counter, the dark, steady eyes that had looked at him at the end. Not with anger, not with triumph, but with the patient, open look of someone who had already decided to give him more grace than he had earned. "I think I might," he said. And then, sitting on the floor of his apartment with his back against the wall, Brandon Voss did something he had not done in a very long time, and he let himself feel the full weight of everything he had gotten wrong. Not just that morning in the showroom, not just the words he had said to a man in a dirty hoodie, but the longer, quieter accumulation of it. The years of building walls out of surfaces, of measuring people by their exteriors, of leaving behind a street and a house and a woman who cleaned mirrors so strangers could see themselves while never once asking him to look more carefully at his own. He sat on the floor for a long time. Outside his window, Los Angeles moved through its evening the way it always did, enormous and indifferent and full, somehow, of people carrying things no one else could see. Brandon stayed on the floor until his legs went stiff. Then he got up slowly and stood at the window for a while with his hands in his pockets and watched the lights come on across the city. One by one, then all at once. The way darkness always arrives, gradually and then completely. He thought about his mother planting tomatoes every spring in a backyard 11 miles away. He thought about 31 years of cream-colored doors and cracked sidewalks and a woman who had wiped mirrors clean for other people her entire life without once asking for anything that resembled what she deserved. He called her back. He said he was coming on Saturday. She said he didn't have to. He said he knew. He came anyway, with groceries, with coffee from the place on Ventura Boulevard she had always liked but considered too expensive to visit regularly, with no agenda and no efficiency and nowhere else to be. And he sat in her kitchen in the house where he had grown up, and they talked the way they hadn't talked in years, slowly, without purpose, following the conversation wherever it wanted to go. He came back the weekend after that, and the one after that. He has not missed a weekend since. Maya Tran deposited her commission 3 days after the sale. She sat with the number in her bank account for one full day before she did anything with it, not out of hesitation, but out of respect for it. The next morning, she called her parents. Her father, Min, had run the nail salon in Glendale for 30 years with her mother, Lon. The salon had a debt that had been sitting over the family like a low ceiling for 11 years. Accumulated during a slow period, restructured twice, quietly suffocating the margins of everything they built. Now Maya paid it off in a single transfer. She did not tell them it was coming. She called them after it was done. Her mother cried. Her father did not cry, but was silent for long enough that it meant the same thing. Maya stayed at Blackwood Motor House for another year. Then she left and started her own luxury vehicle consulting business, working with private buyers who valued honesty and precision over performance. She is doing well. She has a small office in Pasadena, 9 minutes from East Colorado Boulevard. Donna Voss is in remission. Dr. Patel reviewed the 6-month scans in the spring of 2023 and used the word clear 3 times in the same sentence, which Donna took as a good sign. She tends her tomatoes. She goes to Mass at St. Brendan on Sundays. Gloria, the retired school teacher who used to bring tea for the drive home from chemotherapy, has become something closer to a friend than a volunteer. They have lunch on the second Tuesday of every month at a diner on Van Nuys Boulevard that has good pie and does not rush you. The 3-word card, "You Matter Too," sits in the frame of Donna's bathroom mirror where she sees it first thing every morning. The Ferrari still sits in the driveway. She has not driven it and does not intend to. She is going to sell it and give everything from the sale to Sunridge Family Services. She has not gotten around to it yet, and she has stopped feeling guilty about that. Sometimes it is enough simply to have something beautiful in your driveway and to know with complete certainty that a stranger looked at your life and decided you were worth seeing. Keanu Reeves attended the premiere of John Wick. Chapter 4. On March 24, 2023, at the Odeon Lux Leicester Square in London, in a black suit that fit well, with his hair combed back and his face open and easy. He signed autographs for a long time after, longer than his team had scheduled, long enough that the crowd thinned naturally rather than being managed away. Then he went home. He does not talk about the cars. He has not mentioned Blackwood Motor House in any interview. He has not told the story because the story was never meant to be his to tell. That is the thing about Keanu Reeves that no amount of profiling or celebrity journalism or carefully worded magazine pieces has ever quite captured. He gives things away and then genuinely lets them go. The giving is the whole point. The recognition is not part of it. People who have worked alongside him across 35 years in this industry say the same things in the same words with the same slightly surprised quality, as if they expected it to be different and are still adjusting to the fact that it isn't. He is the same person in the parking lot that he is on the red carpet. The same unhurried patience. The same steady, kind eyes. The same habit of learning the names of people that the room has decided don't need to be learned. His name in Hawaiian means cool breeze over the mountains. He was born with it. He has spent his entire life quietly and without announcement earning it. But this story has one more room to walk through before it closes. It has to go back to Brandon Voss one last time. Not because he is the hero of any of this, he isn't. And he would be the first to say so now. But because he is the most human part of it. He is the part that most of us, if we are honest in the right light, recognize in ourselves. He went back to Blackwood Motor House the Monday after his mother called him. He sat at his glass desk. He put his coffee down. He looked at the showroom floor, at the empty spaces where the Lamborghini and the Rolls-Royce and the Ferrari had been, now filled by 3 new arrivals and new spotlights. And he made a decision that had nothing to do with sales strategy or professional adjustment, or updating his approach. He walked to Maya Tran's desk and sat down across from her. She looked up, said nothing, waited. "I owe you an apology," he said. Maya put her pen down. "Brandon." "Not for the commission," he said. "I mean for that too. But that's not the main thing." He looked at the desk between them rather than at her face, the way people look away when what they're saying is costing them something. "I stopped you from doing your job that morning because I decided, in about 4 seconds, that I already knew what was happening. I do that. I've done it for a long time." He paused. "I think I've done it with a lot of people." Maya was quiet for a moment. She was not a person who filled silences just to fill them. "I know where you grew up," she said finally. He looked up. "What?" "Kittredge Street," she said. "You told me a long time ago when I first started here. You said it like you were mentioning somewhere you'd been through once, not somewhere you'd lived." She said it without accusation, just as a fact, placed carefully on the desk between them. "I grew up in Glendale. My parents worked every day of my life with their hands. I know what it looks like when someone is trying very hard to be somewhere other than where they started." Brandon didn't say anything for a while. "I thought leaving was the whole point," he said. "Leaving is fine," Maya said. "It's what you take with you that matters." The thing about moments of reckoning is that they are almost never dramatic when they actually arrive. Movies have taught us to expect the swelling music, the speech, the clear before and after. Real life is quieter than that. Real change doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It tends to arrive the way dawn arrives, slowly, then undeniably, without asking for your permission. Brandon Voss did not have a single transformative conversation that rewired him completely. He had a series of small ones. With his mother in her kitchen, over bad coffee and good tomatoes. With Maya across her desk, without anyone else in the room. With himself in the car driving home from Van Nuys on Saturday evenings, in the specific silence of someone who is slowly learning to sit with things instead of managing them from a distance. He started doing something he hadn't done in years. When a customer walked through the door, he waited, not for the shoes or the watch or the car they arrived in. Just waited, an extra breath, an extra second, before deciding anything at all. It was a small change. It cost him nothing. He has no way of knowing how much it has given back. Robert and Claire Okafor, the founders of Sunridge Family Services, received an anonymous donation in February 2023 that they still talk about in the particular hushed tone of people who have witnessed something they don't have adequate words for. The donation came with no name, no return address, no paperwork beyond the wire transfer confirmation. It was enough money to build a new wing of their transitional housing facility. 6 additional rooms for the relatives of patients in long-term care who had nowhere nearby to stay. They named the wing the Ava Wing because someone had asked them to. That someone had not explained the name. They had not felt it was their place to ask. Daniel Okafor, their son, the 7-year-old with leukemia who had become a 29-year-old pediatric nurse in Glendale, walked through the new wing on the day it opened and stood in one of the rooms for a long time. It had a window that looked out onto a small garden. The light came through in the late afternoon in the particular way that light comes through windows when the room faces west, warm and slanted and full of something that feels, if you stand in it long enough, like being told that things will be all right. He did not know the full story behind the wing. He knew enough. There is a version of this story that is about money, about a man spending $1.2 million on a Tuesday morning and the spectacle of it, about the comeuppance of a manager who misjudged the room. That version is easier to tell. It fits inside a headline. It travels fast. But the actual story is about something that doesn't fit inside a headline and doesn't travel as fast, because it requires a person to slow down and look at it carefully from more than one angle. It is about a woman on a bus in November going 11 miles to a hospital to sit in a chair and be made temporarily smaller so she might eventually be made whole. It is about the letter she wrote that she almost didn't write, about the volunteer with the thermos of tea, about the 4,000 people who bought a raffle ticket because something beautiful was suddenly within reach and they wanted to try. It is about a girl at a dealership front desk who had her name remembered once in passing and felt the full weight of being seen in the small, uncomplicated act of being thanked. It is about a man who sat on the floor of his apartment and felt, for perhaps the first time in a very long time, the difference between running from something and building something. It is about the people who never make it into the credits, the Hectors and the Glorias, and the Petitias from Pomona who cry when their phone rings with impossible news, who are doing the invisible work that holds the whole structure up while the lights point somewhere else. And it is about a man from Beirut who lost everything that mattered twice, who carries a grief that no camera has ever fully caught, who shows up to his garage in the morning and works with his hands and remembers the names of people who expect to be forgotten, and who on a Tuesday in September drove to a showroom in a dirty gray hoodie because he had something to take care of, and no reason to make it about himself. Keanu Reeves did not change Brandon Voss's life. He simply walked through a door the way he always walks, without performance, without armor, without asking anything from the room in return. Brandon changed his own life. The door was already there. It had always been there. The last time anyone confirmed seeing Keanu Reeves at Arch Motorcycle Company's workshop in Los Angeles was a Tuesday morning in early 2023. A person who lived nearby and walked past regularly reported simply that the lights were on early, and there was the sound of metalwork from inside, the steady, patient sound of someone building something by hand. Nobody took a picture. Nobody wrote a caption. The work was just the work. The morning was just the morning. The cool breeze moved quietly over the mountains the way it always has. The mountains didn't ask it to explain itself. Neither should we. And that is the story of a man in a dirty gray hoodie who walked into a room full of people who had already decided who he was, and quietly, without a single speech or grand gesture, showed every one of them something they hadn't expected to see. Not just about himself, about themselves. Keanu Reeves didn't set out to teach anyone a lesson that Tuesday morning. He didn't go to that showroom with a hidden camera or a point to prove. He went because he had something to take care of. Because somewhere in this enormous, loud, fast-moving city, there were people who mattered and needed to know it. And he was the kind of man who acted on that. Not for applause, not for headlines, but simply because it was the right thing to do and he was in a position to do it. That's the rarest kind of person there is. Before you go, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell us where in the world you are watching this from. We have people tuning in from places we never expected, and every single comment genuinely makes our day. If this story moved you even a little, if it made you think about someone you should call or a kindness you've been putting off, or the way you looked at a stranger today, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach someone out there who might really need to hear it today. And if you believe that kindness is worth spreading, that stories like this one deserve to travel further than the people who already know them, subscribe to this channel and join a community that actually believes people are worth seeing.